Welcome back to another episode of the Daily Turnup. Thank you all for joining in. This week has been absolutely insane. We already have United States getting involved with Iran, and we're just going to get right into it. So, CK, BG, you ready for this?
I'm ready, MR. Let's get into a fight.
You ready, BG?
MR, let's do it. This is crazy.
All right. So, I want to open up with kind of about a 3-minute overview of what I think is really happening, what's going to happen. So I've had a lot of people reach out to me over the last 24 hours, basically being like, hey, MR, are we going to get into World War III? Should I be concerned for my family right now? Should I run to the mountains? Should I leave the city area? I live in New York City. I live near these major metropolitan areas. Should I leave? Should I be scared? Should I take my family? And before we even get into it, I want to say, don't be scared. Don't let the anxiety win. I mean, maybe CK and BG think differently, but I don't think anyone in America should have a real fear that there's going to be any retaliation. Because when you look at this, there's really two things on the fear level, and people are fear mongering all over the internet. You have, will there be a nuclear war, and will there be a World War III? Well, clearly, Iran does not have nukes now, regardless how close they were or weren't. And no other country with nuclear capabilities wants to get involved in a war with the United States where they would fire nukes. It's not France, it's not China, not Russia. We are not at that point. When you look at World War III, we are so far off from it because I find it incredibly unlikely that the United States, Israel, or anyone else would do a ground invasion into Iran. Iran is an incredibly mountainous country. It has deserts. It's probably, arguably, one of the most challenging places to invade in the entire world. Just geographically, where we sit with Iran, too, they don't have the missile capability to reach the United States, where we can't intercept them as well. And Iran's military capacity really just extends to the region, hence why them and Israel fight all the time. So just kind of tampering those fears right away. Nuclear war, not on the table. World War III, incredibly far away, almost 0% chance, especially when you have Russia engaged so heavily in Ukraine. No one else can really come to Iran's side to help them out, outside of maybe a little bit of China, but they don't want that. So when you shift to the United States, on our last episode, we talked about, hey, will the United States actually take action against Iran and to what capacity? Well, last night it confirmed that the United States did launch 3 separate strikes on 3 different nuclear facilities. Now, each facility was a little different in nature, whether it was enrichment and other types of facilities. And so from what President Donald Trump said, what we've read on the media, they took in the B-2s. They did an insane air raid in Iran that I don't think we've ever seen in our lifetime. Maybe the largest or most, I don't know, badass since World War II. And from the intel that we're receiving right now, it has taken out Iran's complete nuclear capabilities. Maybe information comes out later today saying that they have more and they have more hidden bases, but as it stands right now, they don't have nuclear capabilities or close to that. So what it really leaves, at least what I think, is what's next? Will there be a regime change in Iran? We know Israel is pushing it. We know Donald Trump talked about it. It seems as of now that he doesn't want it. But with Donald Trump, you never know what he's thinking. That's a good thing and a bad thing. It all depends what side of the bed he sleeps on, depending if he's going to overthrow Iran or not. And to give a quick breakdown of that is that there's 2 arguments. The argument is we should not assassinate a supreme leader, a world leader of a country that we are not at war with, nor should we assassinate in general. If that happens, there more than likely than not be a power vacuum. Be highly unlikely that it would go back to pre-1979 Iran, where it's a Western democracy type country. And if anything, it would be what we do really great. We destroy countries, and there becomes a power vacuum, and terrorists fill the void. And then you can look at having terrorists from Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, and what's the only common denominator? The United States brought instability to the region because we cannot build nations. And I think that is more likely than not. The flip side argument is Iran is a horrible country. They kill gays. They kill women that step out of place. They fund terrorist organizations, whether it's the Houthis, ISIS, Hezbollah, wherever. And we need to kill evil in the world. But there's a thing to be said is, there's a benefit to knowing your enemy. And the only threat Iran really posed to the United States, again, we're talking from the United States point of view, not Israel, is that if they had nuclear weapons, it is a game changer, and it breaks the status, it breaks the norm, it breaks the Iran enemy that we're used to dealing with. So as long as Iran doesn't have nuclear capabilities, the United States can, for the most part, contain Iran's aggression through its terrorist organizations. All right, CK, I'll pause there before we get into shutting down the Strait of Hormuz and how that escalates tensions. Do you disagree with my analysis? Do you think I'm in a crazy town? What do you think's going on? Let's make sense of what's going on in the world right now.
Yeah, you said a lot there, MR. I took some notes. I'll go one by one with what I agree and disagree. Will there be a nuclear war? You say unlikely. I mean, yeah, of course it's unlikely. Are we closer to a nuclear war than we have been since, 1970? I would say true. So like we we are we are unlikely to be in a nuclear war, I think all the way up until we are in a nuclear war.
Yeah, I
And
think it's incredibly unlikely, like almost as close to 0% as you can get. Because if you look at the countries with nukes, none of them want to get involved over what has currently happened.
Russia announced today that they are willing and able to supply Iran with nuclear weapons. So
If they're not going to use them on Ukraine, they're not going to give them to Iran. That is just BS.
what do you mean? Iran is the proxy. They fight a lot of wars through Iran so that they can be separated.
Then you're going to have a Cuban Missile Crisis on your hand. And instead of JFK, we have Donald Trump leading that charge.
That's my point, MR. You say it's unlikely. I mean, of course it's unlikely, but I would argue that we're closer than we have been since probably the 70s. Next point: will we invade Iran? You say unlikely, but you also said that we might overthrow the government. How do we overthrow the government, or Israel overthrow the government without an invasion? Maybe, I mean, you can do it with predator drones and bomb strikes and things like that, and special forces. I think you're not going to be able to regime change without some sort of invasion. And the other thing is we haven't talked about retaliation. Like, okay, yeah, we're good with what just happened, and now let's let the dust settle and go back to normalcy. You think
Yep.
you think Iran's gonna just sit back and do nothing? You know, I I would argue that they probably have some sleeper cells here ready to do domestic terrorism in the United States homeland, and if that happens, I think anything goes, right?
So that's a great point. When I look at the Iranian response, because there will be, I look at it very much to be a symbolic one when we assassinated Soleimani 5-6 years ago. I think Iran understands that we have the upper hand here. We have all the capabilities and we can do whatever we want. We told them, from what I've read, we told them that, hey, we're going to attack these facilities, evacuate your people, and no civilians died. So there's still a level of like gentlemanship where we don't want to escalate to the point where, hey, if we started attacking different Ukrainian military bases, killing their civilians, I think that's where you open up the floodgates, and that's when they activate their sleeper cells. When what I think the response will be is that Iran will fire a few missiles at some of our bases in the Middle East, whether it's in Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Syria, wherever. Maybe it does damage. Maybe it blows up an aircraft hangar, but I don't think anyone's going to die because, to your point, it'll escalate and we have the bigger punch. They need a symbolic attack to show that they're not completely pushovers or complete pushovers.
Yeah, possible. I mean, I agree that is on the table. That might happen. But I would also argue that they're not hitting Tel Aviv with ballistic missiles like they did when Soleimani died. They're hitting it like they want to pack a punch, not like
Yeah, but that's totally different because Israel started firing, missiles at them and they were aggressive. It's not like they just fired one, they took out one person. They're matching. Well, I think they're matching
They're trying to be
force for
proportional.
force. Yeah.
Yeah, trying to be proportional response.
I think we're very, very. I mean, maybe you're right, but I think we're very, very close from this getting the cat getting out of the bag and getting away from everyone. Everyone's trying to be proportional and gentlemanly, and this we're one accident away from we're invading Iran. I think that's.
I just cannot imagine that world.
So I mean, I'll say this: like, all of us is like, well, Donald Trump said 2 weeks, and he said we're going to negotiate for 2 weeks. I actually thought that was one of the more cooler head things. 2 weeks, let's talk this through. Let's let diplomacy prevail. 2 days, he didn't even care. Like, it was like, so I don't think we have it in us. I think this is a different world that we're in, and I think everything is spiraling. We saw that with Russia and Ukraine. I think our chance for this to get held back was before we bombed Iran, and now it's likely that things scale back and we go back to nothing, but it's also, I think, just as likely that Iran escalates and then we have to escalate, and pretty soon the troops are going in there.
I mean, we said the same thing about Soleimani a few years ago back, and I mean, maybe there's a chance. I think it's super low, but BG, do you think we should have attacked Iran's nuclear facilities?
MR, candidly, I think it goes back to what you and I talked about last episode, where we say, okay, what is the actual end state in attacking these sites? So we've taken out scientists, arguably. How many? We don't know.
Sure.
We're continuing to strike these sites, and then the battle damage assessment of the bombs that were just dropped hasn't been completely, assessed. So
yeah,
what do we say is the right level of intervening per se? I'm kind of on board with the CK's thinking here and rationalizing that.
I'm shocked, honestly. Keep going.
It doesn't really. I mean, what's the bargaining chip, right, at this point? Because we've now put ourselves in a position where we are at a full force scale on scale type environment, right? And then Iran, in terms of military capability, doesn't have the capability to attack us back. But to your point, MR, yeah, they do have sleeper cells here, and they also have a fantastic cyber program. So what do they attack with their cyber capabilities? Do they look at our power generation? Do they look at, nuclear energy type things? Like, what do they actually target? We've never really looked at behind the scenes, if they were to retaliate in any capacity. What does that look like from their perspective? So in terms of striking the way that they did and how they did it, I said last episode, I didn't think it was going to happen, and here we are. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see if it pays off, right?
I mean, every war and every massive event, a month before was completely unpredictable, right? No one predicted the start of World War One, and no one predicted Pearl Harbor in the U.S. getting dragged into a war the next day. So these things happen fast, and that's why I think if I'm the leader of the free world, I need to take my actions with a little more prejudice, and I need to be a little slower. When I say 2 weeks, maybe I should take 2 weeks and not 2 days, because one false move, one overstep, and then one response, and then things get out of hand.
CK, I think this is a great point, and I believe it was back in 2001 when after 9/11, United States President Bush talked to whoever and said, "Hey, I want bin Laden. You have 48 hours." And then we invaded on hour 42. And there's like, if you gave me those extra 8 hours, we would have turned in bin Laden. So to your point, acting too aggressively, acting not within a time frame or putting out a time frame and not acting within it is very dangerous. And so I'm just trying to look at it from the perspective of, okay, everything we've seen this year has been unpredictable. We've made jokes about starting a bingo card about things, the most crazy things happening, and then doing a bingo card about it, and we probably would have hit bingo 5 times already. And so, yeah, maybe thinking logically and rationally isn't the right thing to do. But in the same breath, I cannot envision a world in which we're bringing conventional forces into Iran. That is just so hard. It goes against our Okay, let me back up. When I look at near-peer threats, I only see China as our only near-peer threat in every capability. Where I view as Iran, about 50 years behind us, where we can do bombing raids for days and the country wouldn't exist if we didn't want it to. And so when I think in that line, I'm like, why do we actually need to put boots on ground? We don't. We can just bomb them into oblivion. We don't need to. And also, I don't think at all it is in the United States' best interest for a regime change. I think that creates too much unpredictability and it creates too much risk for not knowing the outcome. There's an expression, it's killing me, I don't know what it is, but it's what's the expression about knowing your enemy? I'm about to chat GPT it because it's killing me. I can't remember. Are you doing it right now, CK?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
You'd rather a known enemy, right, versus an unknown enemy. That's because you push for a regime change, which is interesting. So I haven't had a chance to actually.
The devil you don't.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Which is interesting because CK and I were talking about this before we started the podcast. We haven't had a chance to look at what Hex said this morning, but I was looking through stuff on Wall Street Journal. And it's interesting because Hegseth actually said, hey, our strikes had nothing to do with the regime change, and that's not something we're actually looking at. Interestingly enough, guess who just said the opposite?
Who?
Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, is saying that it looks like if they continue to try to pursue any sort of nuclear capability, it'll be regime change. Very interesting.
That
And
is
who
terrifying.
else is saying the opposite? More influential than Rubio, Bibi Netanyahu.
Yeah.
So I mean,
He wants regime change.
that's what I'm saying. He's saying
Okay.
so. You made 2 points. That one, you couldn't envision boots on the ground. I'll counter that with, imagine 2 weeks from now, 4th of July. There's big festivals across every big city in the world. You get a drone swarm that drops C4 into crowds of people, courtesy of some Iranian who's been in the States for the last 10 years just waiting to be activated. Okay.
Sure.
Are we invading Iran after that? We probably are invading Iran after that. You don't think so? I
don't think that's what I'm saying. So I think right now, all right, let's pivot to that escalation part, right? To where Iran today said that they are going to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. I think that is probably the most dangerous thing that has happened yet, right? Because I think it's a little tit for tat. And is the world going to respect that? No, they're not. We have the Fifth Fleet over there. We have 25% of the world's oil goes through there. So what's going to happen? We're going to push through. If they attack any oil vessels, if they attack any U.S. ships, that's that next level of escalation. And so that is then where it can become dangerous. And so,
yeah, sure.
And that's where it can become unpredictable. But I do not think that they will do either suicide vests in Times Square, launching drones from wherever until we cross a certain line. And I do not think that line was attacking its nuclear facilities. I think something more aggressive needs to happen to do that, because to your point, the United States will get involved. And what are they going to do then? They're going to make, you don't think Trump's going to make it rain bombs and he's just going to level massive amounts of Iran, whether it's all their military bases that we see, every single airfield that they have, and set them back? Well, that's what I'm saying. It has to.
I guess my
has
question
to make sense.
I guess my question to you then, and to BG, is why are we getting involved in this at all in the first place? If we don't,
I was waiting for you to get to. I was waiting for you to get to this.
Like you're saying that you assess that they would be too scared to threaten us, and they aren't actually a threat to the homeland. So if I'm looking at Donald Trump and America First, why do I care about all roads lead back to because Israel wants us to?
BG, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I mean, I partially agree because we're so tied to the hip with the Israelis, but I also take the flip side of the coin of recognizing that pre-1979, Iran would have been a partial democracy. I mean, they still use their parliament today. Not really, right? It's really all the Ayatollah, but well, yeah, that too.
Iran was like a paradise in the 50s. People would take their honeymoons to Iran.
Yeah, before the Islamic Revolution. That's my point, right? So think about what would happen today if Iran were no longer an authoritarian power that's a proxy for Russia and China.
But
so
who had a play in that?
Everyone.
Us.
The U.S., France, Britain, everybody.
So I mean, instead of like acknowledging that, why do we keep getting involved? Like when you are a threat to the people, their answer is to have the biggest, baddest man rule them to protect them, right? It's like out of necessity, every one of these countries needs a dictator because they need someone that's gonna protect their interests, like because everyone else is overthrown. If you're not the baddest person there, you're getting ousted, and that's our doing. So if we wanted democracy, we would stop messing with them.
I meant democracy insofar as the support that we had shown them over the years, because everything that exists in Iran today, in terms of infrastructure, airports, trains, even all their military capability up to a certain extent, was all supplied by the West, and that's because we were allies with them. And then 1979. So going back to why did we get involved in the first place? I would say Iran started this back in 1979 when they attacked our embassy. This has actually just been a war because up to this point, Iran has declared war on the U.S. since that point and has never withdrawn their war consideration. So if we're really looking historically, they've never actually said, "Hey, we're no longer at war with the U.S."
Okay, so you think they started it, but you just acknowledged that we were involved in, the Islamic Revolution and radical Muslims taking over. So who started it is a question. I would say that they would have a different answer for who started. But what's a better question?
I
Because
think
it
it's
doesn't matter who
50-50.
started. Yeah, okay.
I think it's
But
50-50.
we're supposed to be the peacekeepers and the world police. So why do we keep rolling the ball down the hill? It keeps going on. It's ongoing because of us.
Can you allow a regime with this type of influence and power to have nuclear arms that could then be proliferated to insane
Yes, okay. I don't think we
organizations?
should. I mean, we have to acknowledge the fact that yes, they hate America. Yes, they fund terrorist organizations. Yes, one of their long-term and short-term objectives is to cause as much pain to the United States that they can with the power that they have. Like they are adversaries to the United States. Now, I know
Because we're
want to say
adversaries
that.
to them.
Sure. I mean,
But we weren't.
But
They attacked us first.
But we're talking.
We're looking at it from that perspective.
50 years ago, and like the nuances of that isn't they attacked us first. It's we helped we helped turn that thing from a paradise to authoritarian government. So I mean the nuances of that I won't even argue about because it's like you could say we both did bad things, right? But here now we're constantly in that region. And what are they doing here? And on top of that, if we don't want them to have nukes, right? Why did here's a perfect example. We didn't want Libya to have nukes. Gaddafi rolled them back, and then what did we do to get Gaddafi?
yeah, no.
We got rid of him. He got tortured and raped and killed in the streets, okay? Because we funded that. As soon as the threat of nukes were gone, that's what we did. Okay. North Korea, we don't want them to have nukes, but how many attacks have we made on North Korea?
I mean, if the point you're making is that nukes preserve a country's sovereignty and the ability for a foreign country to mess with that country, I think that's a fair point.
But not only does it preserve their sovereignty, we are like Pavlov's dog, teaching them that if you don't have it, you're done. You have no recourse against us. That's the only thing keeping us at bay.
But I think the flip side of the coin is these guys are legitimately willing to give those arms to other people just to kill Israelis and Americans. I think that's a legitimate threat.
Because like CK, do you think the world's a more dangerous place if Iran had a nuke or multiple nukes or had the ability to make nukes?
I think the world would be a more peaceful place if both Iran and Israel rolled back their nukes. And there were no nukes in the Middle East. I think if we wanted,
sure, okay,
them
that's not going to happen.
Exactly. So if we actually wanted no nukes for Iran, we would say Israel, no nukes for you, and then there would be no nukes in the Middle East.
Yeah, but Israel's not using their nukes. They can use them, and they choose not to. They show restraint. I don't want to defend Israel on this, but I'm just
why do they show restraint? Because they're threatened with retaliation.
By who? The United States?
By that axis of Russia, China, Iran. If Israel launched a nuke, it would be over for them. They know that.
Okay, so if that's the case, then Iran doesn't need nukes, then, right? If there's if the biggest players in the world have nukes, and it level sets everyone else, like, hey, you're not going to fire it, then it doesn't matter then.
Until it does, until it is launched, right?
Well, that's everything until it is.
Which is why I would say, if you really wanted a denuclearized Iran and stop moving toward nukes, you would make the same pact with Israel.
I disagree. I totally disagree. I think Israel today has nuclear armament because of how their country was founded. I think it all goes back to they've had to fight for their survival since their founding. And I think that because they were literally fighting every Arab state since that point, if they didn't have nuclear armament, they would likely have had multiple wars since the 70s and 80s onward with Arab states.
They have, but
No, I mean to an even larger extent, like when they were being attacked full force.
I disagree with that. I mean, they have us, right?
It wasn't the same level back then. Same level of support.
I don't think that nukes are causing that. I think if again, you can argue if nukes are good or bad, but if you're telling me that nukes are bad in the hands of Iran, then I would say if you didn't want that, then the best option would be for Israel to roll back their nuclear program.
Well, the reason why I think it's bad is that one, it gives another level of unpredictability with Iran, who very openly hates Israel and the United States and could cut their nose to spite their face. Also, it gives them more power, more leverage to fund terrorist organizations, right? We make jokes that, hey, America's bad as well. We do regime changes and all these other things. And sure, we're not without our sin. We're not without our fault. But Iran, again, I'm not a proponent of like continuously bombing Iran or doing a regime change. But Iran is also a horrific government. Their leadership are terrible. They kill innocent people. They kill anyone that speaks out about their government. Whatever you say about the United States, people were protesting No King's Day. Whether you think it was stupid or not, guess what? They didn't all get rounded up. They didn't get thrown in jail or whatever, unless they rioted. But that's different. And they're funding terrorist organizations who actively have fought us in Iraq and Afghanistan when we were there. They're actively fighting Israel, right? So they are a bad, horrific group of individuals. And you can say, sure, that's acting in their own best interest. Why do they have to be the adversary? Because they're funding terrorists.
Well, I would argue that everything you just described Israel's actions in Gaza, right? Last week, there was a man standing in line for flour at like a food bank, and the IDF just opened fire on this guy. like who has had more genocide than the IDF in Gaza? I mean, if we're talking about like no morals and things like that, that's if I were a Muslim, that would be my perspective on the government of Israel, the state of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu. And then if we're talking, and you also mentioned Iran, they might just pop a nuke. They're unpredictable. Says the Americans who, their president said 2 weeks, negotiate for 2 weeks, and then 2 days bombed this country. So who's more unpredictable, the United States, and who's more genocidal? I would say maybe toss up between Israel and Iran.
Not a toss up. PG, I'll let you talk 1 second. I know you're itching too. But one big difference, Iranian scale. The scale of what Iran has done compared to Israel is night and day. And they've been doing it for a significantly longer portion of time. And yes, I think Israel is one of the most hated countries in the world because of Gaza. Wherever you turn around the world, people are waving Palestinian flags, whether they're from Palestine, from Gaza, from wherever. So I think Israel is receiving worldwide criticism and people are protesting them as much as possible. Heck, wasn't that one reason why Kamala didn't get the votes, is because they said, hey, Democrats should not support Israel on this. And a lot of Democrats sat out the election because they didn't want to support this. So I do think that there is a worldwide reaction to what Israel is doing in Gaza.
Yeah, so I mean, sure, but there's also the same reaction to Iran and to China. I mean, just to say that people acknowledge it doesn't, it's happening. So we can't say we should attack Iran because Iran is bad. Because Israel.
Oh, I'm not arguing that either. I'm not.
Okay.
I'm just saying that there's an argument for it, but I'm not saying that argument justifies it.
Yeah, because I would just say that same argument would be for why Iran is attacking Israel.
Sure.
But
I don't think Iran should have nukes. I think that's terrible. I think any new country getting a nuke is not a good idea.
I don't think Iran should have nukes either. I also don't think Israel should have nukes.
All right. They have them. They're not going to give them up, and they've shown restraint to not using them. They didn't use it in Gaza. They haven't used it in Iran before. And depending on how many nukes they have, like Israel then has the capability of wiping out at least 50, 60, 70% of Iran, and they choose not to. Could you say that Iran would show the same level of restraint when they would only need one, maybe two?
Probably Kim Jong-un's shown restraint. MR, he hasn't launched any nukes yet. I mean, because one hasn't gone doesn't. I mean, I would say it's not a great argument, right? China hasn't shown restraint. Russia has shown restraint. No one, like the most evil people, the dictators that of the current day, all have nukes, and
Yeah,
none
because
of
they
them have
weigh all
launched.
odds. I mean, there's severe consequences to launching a nuke, and I think North Korea
That's my
hasn't because
point.
one, who would they fire it at?
No,
And
Seoul. What do you
two,
mean? They're their number one enemy. They could today launch it a couple hundred kilometers to hit Seoul.
But it does nothing to get them to their end state because they want to
I would
unify
argue
the
the same.
peninsula.
That's my
yeah, if they
argument.
want to unify, yeah.
No, but if you nuke Seoul, then you can't take over Seoul. You'd have to wait like 40 years, just like Chernobyl. So like what?
Well,
It doesn't help them achieve their end state.
I agree, and then Kim Jong Un's overthrown. I would say that's
Yeah,
the same. That's the same reason Israel has shown restraint. So to just say they
but that's
haven't launched nuke is a sign of restraint. No, it's a sign of they understand that it would be the end of them if they did. It would
Israel's
be
using
a
it
bad
as a
political
deterrent.
move.
Israel uses it as a deterrent.
That's
I'm confident
exactly
that
what North Korea is doing, though.
that Iran would use it as an actual attack in some
I think
capacity.
it would be a deterrent as well.
Whether it's through them, I don't think so. I don't think that they would just hold on to these weapons and not actually use them in some capacity. Whether it's ensuring that terrorist organizations get a hold of them or they're able to use them for some other bargaining chip into the future with other Western countries. I think that's the big difference. To your point about Gaza, Hamas also uses things like hospitals all over the place. If you look at the number of hospitals that exist in Gaza, it's insane. But they're not actually hospitals. They're terrorist organization centers are using as command posts that they can then say, hey, the Israelis are attacking these things. And it's anti, ROE or whatever we want to say, right?
Hamas is bad.
Let's not forget.
Agreed.
Let's not forget that all of these terrorist organizations have launched over 15,000 rockets or missile systems indiscriminately into Israel all over the place. So blood for blood. Yeah, the Israelis are bad. They're killing civilians. But it's blood for blood. It's a religious holy war that's never going to stop, right? Because someone has a greater moral compass than the other. It's nonsense. It's total nonsense. It's the same with the Iranians.
I think we're on the same page that no one is better. There's no moral superiority on either side. But I think most people, I mean, if you listen to the Ted Cruz Tucker, it was like, we should support Israel because Israel is just better and they are God's people written in the Bible. What kind of argument is that? Like Bibi Netanyahu, Genesis chapter 7 tells me that I need to support Bibi Netanyahu with bunker busters. What?
I would say it's more connected to we cannot afford for Israel to not be an ally of the United States, given how much we have shared with them, whether economically, militarily, or in an intelligence community. I think that's what it's actually more tied
to. Okay, so I would argue that if we didn't want to lose Israel, then we should tell Israel to stop dragging us into wars because they're really making it hard to ally with them.
Sure, but they're also the ones being attacked every day. How would you feel? How would you feel if whatever state you live in had taken 18,000 rockets in some capacity from all of your surrounding states?
If I leveled, 2 or 3 of those surrounding states, then, it would be a different story, right?
After they're blowing up hospitals in Tel Aviv. I mean, it's the same thing.
Yeah, but you're saying like one happened and then the other happened and it was a response. I don't think it's like that, right? I think there's been 70 years of forced migration and starvation and killings and genocide. And I think, McChrystal, I'll say this again. It's one of my favorite lines for the whole war on terrorism. And this is just, the next step in that the evolution of the war on terrorism is why couldn't we win there? Why can't Israel it's because this is terrorist math, right? When you kill someone's when you level an apartment and someone's daughter died, you just radicalized 3 people who probably didn't have anything to do with the war. They're just trying to survive. That's people.
Not true.
That's not true. That doesn't
not
happen.
Even or we'd be at war forever with every country that's ever fought a war. Europe would still hate each other if that was the case. You know how many French and Germans killed each other between World War I, World War II? You know that they're like best friends right now. My point is people move on and get over it in whatever capacity, and they don't stay at war forever. They don't see radicalized for forever. I don't see Berlin and Paris trying to bomb each other right now.
Sure. But I would argue that most of the people that died were men that were soldiers, and there's a level of understanding that if you go, your son goes to war, your husband goes to war, they might die, and there's not like a lot of hatred. There's an understanding like that's what they came to do. He's there to kill them. When you're bombing apartment buildings and women and babies are dying, like that's a different level of hate that you're breeding. And I will acknowledge that there was, there's a difference when Western, Roman or Germanic people who have grown up for the last, 4,000 years together, when they have very similar cultures, they can make peace a lot quicker. And when you have like people with different mindsets, different religions, different worldviews, the hatred runs a lot deeper. I will acknowledge that, but last longer. But I'm just saying that it's not in our best interest to do this.
Sure. Yeah. And my point I always make is countries act in their own best interest. And right, for whatever historical reasons or how Israel was founded and everything else, the United States has chosen the side of Israel being their ally.
Yeah.
And I agree. We should not get dragged into war. Nor do I think, all I see is everyone's like, Trump's the no war president, and now we're entering a war. I firmly believe we're not entering a war. I like 99%. I don't buy the narrative that this is going to escalate out of control. I don't buy the narrative that we're going to do a ground invasion in Iran. I just do not see that happening. I think Iran, they're going to do some pop shots at some of our bases in the Middle East that we've already abandoned, or we get a heads up and we go into bunkers and they destroy a building, a hangar. Maybe they hit a jet so that they can have some, confidence back to people saying, we struck them back. But I do not think this will be a war.
Yeah,
and I just don't.
I just want to nuance at one point. They act in their own perceived best interest, right?
But that's everybody. Yeah, people make mistakes all the time. They miscalculate.
And that's my whole argument.
Yeah, that's fair.
That we're getting it wrong by doing what we're doing. Like if you think Japan, looking back, would have attacked Pearl Harbor to bring our
that's
whole
every country that's ever lost in a war ever,
But like, I'm saying right now, my prediction
you can't work
is
in
that,
hindsight.
Yeah, and I'm saying right now, and I obviously not alone, is that this is not in our best interest, and it's going to drag us into 20 more years in the Middle East. Meanwhile, we're spending trillions there, and our economy continues to go worse and worse into debt. And meanwhile, China is still focusing on us, and we can't stop for 1 second in the Middle East to shift our focus to China so that we can compete in that region or even in the globe, because they're concentrating on us and we're concentrating on 1,000 other things. And so that by 2050, like we're surpassed and we're done for as a nation, either economically or through China.
That's the first, I think, thing I've agreed with you in the last 20 minutes, that our focus should be on China. But I do not think that this is going to drag out. I don't think this will turn to war. And honestly, with the information I've been presented so far, again, I'm indifferent whether we should have struck the nuclear facilities. Like I'm not super against it. I'm not super for it. I'm like, oh, it happened. Okay. As long as we can contain the escalation in the manner in which I think it will be contained, I do not think it was a bad thing.
And let's not forget that China has a vested interest in Iran because they purchase over 2 million barrels of oil from them a day.
And they fund their terrorist organizations through Iran.
And they fund them, yes.
Yep, but why do they fund them? To keep us distracted. We're like,
no.
This is why.
No, they just have the cheapest oil. It's because of the sanctions, they have the cheapest oil. That's it.
No, I agree with you there. But why do they fund their terrorist organizations? So that we focus on their terrorist organizations and don't focus on China.
Additional proxy combat. Yes, it's additional proxy combat. Yeah.
And it's our fault for falling hook, line, and sinker.
I think that oil and natural gas are still a significant portion of the world's global economy and how we progress as an advanced society as human beings. And unfortunately, given the geopolitical, ideological differences in that area, you have over a fifth of the world's oil that transits that area, to MR's point about the Strait of Hormuz. So,
have you seen, though, China's looking to be like 95% solar in the next decade?
Yeah, everything I've read about solar is that it's incredibly inefficient.
It doesn't change it doesn't change the fact
Elon
that
says otherwise.
In order for them to maintain their current industrial base and capacity and to increase it over time, they're still reliant on oil and natural gas, which unfortunately...
Also, solar energy can't build steel or can't make steel, and it can't make a lot of things where you need to get temperatures to a certain level to make things. Like there is definitely a limit to what solar can produce.
Yeah, but there's also alternatives. There's nuclear, right? So
I'm a big proponent for nuclear energy,
So,
and I think Iran wants to be, but they
Yeah.
just can't get out of their own way.
No, BJ. I mean, I would agree that oil's not going away, but I do believe that China, knowing that they are relying on Iran and other countries for oil, are going to be less dependent on oil moving forward. So they are less dependent on these other actors.
All right. Nope, that's fair. All right, so we're at the 40-minute mark. We've been at this. I think we've laid out some great thoughts, great opinions. Hopefully, I have eased Americans' minds, and maybe CK has done the opposite. But BG, I'll give it to you first. Give me your, hey, how do you think this is going to turn out? And give me your closing comments.
I think Iran has to respond. I don't think it's going to be anything past what you've already described, MR. So, yeah, they'll try to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, but they've tried doing that since like 2002. So, I don't see that being a really large issue. They usually take their people out of Bandar Ijask, which is one of their southern ports closer to the Gulf of Oman, and then they lay naval mines. They conduct some sort of missile strikes on boats and ships in the area, just like the Houthis are doing, and they use their little fast boats and things. Interested to see if they start employing submarines because I haven't seen anything with respect to that. But just keep in mind, almost a quarter of the world's oil supply and a little bit of the natural gas does flow through that area. So we'll see what the cyber attacks look like, and then to CK's point, if are there any other sleeper cell type strikes? I don't see them wanting to escalate beyond something like a Soleimani strike.
No, thank you, BG. CK, what do you think is going to happen? Give me your closing thoughts.
I think the most likely is BG's probably right. I will say, though, although it's Iran's response coming, Israel is going to choose what. If Israel wants regime change, there will be regime change, and there will be escalation. And CK's conspiracy corner will say that there might be a sleeper cell strike blamed on Iran just to get us more further involved,
like a false flag.
Yeah, because if Israel wants boots on the ground, they'll get it one way or another.
I hope you're wrong there. And so, no, BJ, I definitely agree with you. When you go on social media, when you look at the news, whether it's Fox, CNN, AP, Reuters, wherever, I think you're going to see a lot of fear mongering. I think you're going to see a lot of people try and capitalize on what's going on, really try and paint a picture with a lot of propaganda. If you're on the Democratic side of the house, you're going to think that we're getting dragged into a war, that this is all Trump's fault and he should never have done it. If you're pro-Trump, you're going to be like, yep, Iran should not have nuclear capabilities. You're going to see a ton of things on the TV of B-2 bombs flying with AC/DC rock in the background trying to get the boys hyped for the 4th of July weekend. So hopefully we were able to give you somewhat of a two-sided discussion here, and we're not just throwing propaganda down your face saying, yeah, go America, drop them bombs, F them up, or saying Trump is the worst person ever, he's dragging us into another war. Because when you look at it, I think what's happening, it could easily have happened to Biden or Obama or Bush getting to this point as well. So I agree with BG. I think there will be some retaliatory strikes. I do not think this will escalate to a degree in which we get boots on the ground. A regime change, I don't think is 50-50. I think at this point with the information, it's probably less than 10%. But I disagree with a regime change with the current information that we have at our disposal. If other things surface, then my opinion will change. Well, you have to, like, if you don't change your opinion with new information, then you're no better, right? If you're given new information, you're like, oh, I can make a more of an informed decision because of it. Like, you're an idiot for not using the new information.
As long as I get an "I told you so" in 3 days.
Hey, well, you want to mark it down in 3 days?
Oh, we want to go down the "I told you so" route. Okay, MR was right last time.
Yeah, I've been like pretty spot on. If this was Polymarket, we'd be making millions, boys. Like, I don't know what we're waiting for. This podcast has been so accurate for the last 6 months about just about everything. So,
well, one of us is right. That. So,
and it ain't you. I'm kidding. Well, everyone, thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Daily Turnip. We appreciate your support so much. Hopefully, our 150 core audience comes back, listens. Don't forget about our Patreon page. It is in the description, so I'll put it in the description. I'll make a comment about it. Please support. You can support us with as little as $3 a day. It helps pay for the software. It helps pay for our mics, our headphones, everything to get this episode off the ground. So, thank you all. Please don't let the anxiety, please don't let the fear win. It's going to be okay. And you know what? I hope you all have a great rest of your day.